everyone. I'm going now to continue my topic regarding firearms. So the firearms that we are going now to use is the product of Arms Corps or the RIA or the Rock Island, Philippines. So we have here the .38 revolver. So we are going to use this one. And we have also the 9mm Tanfoglio. So before we are now going to start, let us now going to consider again the rules of gun safety. So we need to check if the firearm is clear. So no ammunition. In the cases of this pistol, we need to release the magazine and we need to check. So it is clear before we are now going to proceed to our presentation. So we'll go now to the question how to determine if the firearm is a homemade or a backyard made firearm. So first, if it has no document, it has no registration, then that is already one of the things that we need to consider. Now, on the physical appearance of a firearm, in the case of this revolver, in the case of the homemade, we cannot see the so-called commercial marks or the brand name or the company name of the firearm. Or we cannot see also the serial number. In some cases that we can see the serial number of the homemade or the backyard made, there is a problem on the marks. They were not able now to copy the markings of the said firearm, including the serial number. Like the one that we have observed before, there is an imperfection on the serial number, uneven, or different sizes of the letterings, including the serial number. So they use an ordinary metal to engrave now the serial number of the said firearm. So that is the one that we need to consider. But in some cases of the homemade or the backyard made firearm, some of the gunsmith, they were now able now to copy the design, the appearance, and the brand of the firearm, like the products in Danau City in Cebu. When we visited that place, we were amazed because they were able now to copy the physical appearance of the firearm, especially the brand, the Smith & Wesson. If you are now going to compare with the original one, it is almost the same. But when we now try to look for other features of the said firearm, when we try to check on the barrel of the firearm, I observed on the riflings, there is the so-called imperfection. It was not polished as compared to the factory made, that by the time that we are going now to peep on the muzzle of the firearm, we can see now the very fine riflings or the barrel was polished. It was very shiny if we are now going to observe. Then in cases of the pistol, again, physical appearance they were able to copy. But on the internal parts of the pistol, there are some small imperfection. Some of it still rough. It was not again polished. So those are the things that we need to consider. Then, next, as to the use. In the cases of the backyard made, it may function, especially if you are now going to test this backyard made or a homemade firearm. It may function for how many rounds of ammunition only. But most of the time, we encounter the so-called malfunction of the firearms. And it is not durable as compared now to the factory made firearm. Based on our observation, basing it on the presentation or some of the shared stories or experience, as to the homemade, every time that we are now going to use the firearm, they usually hear the sound. Some instances, bang. Some instances, tick, because of the malfunction. So that is some of the things that we observe. Like the one that I observed in the video that I searched. As to the problems encountered. In the video, it was presented that there is a difficulty when they try now to extract the cartridge case they need to use some instrument to extract now the cartridge case. In some cases also, there is a problem with the firing pin. Again, problem when they tried now to make the firing pin, it was not able now to strike now the primer cap. You can see that on the image. And another, we usually observe also the so-called shaving marks. The shaving marks are commonly found on the fired bullet from a revolver that has a problem on the alignment of the barrel to the cylinder. So it was not properly aligned. That's why for those who will plan to buy a firearm, buy it on a legitimate gun dealer or gun store later on to avoid those problems. So it will be better if you are now going now to buy a firearm that is factory made firearm. Now in the Philippines, before we can now purchase a firearm, we need to secure the so-called the license to own and possess a firearm, or the so-called the LTAF, before we can purchase. And in the cases of the second-hand firearm, the person who will be selling the said firearm, he needs to present the so-called the LTAF. The person must be a license holder. The same true with the buyer. He needs to present the license to own and possess a firearm before they can buy their own firearm. So that is here in the Philippines. So for those who are going now to plan, so be reminded, let us buy a firearm on the legitimate gun store. It might be more expensive, but it will be more reliable, especially if you are now going to buy a firearm for your protection. Especially owning a firearm, it is a privilege granted by the government. It is not a matter of right, so it is a privilege granted. That's why we need to follow what is written under the law. If you have a plan, buy it on a legitimate gun store with a licensed firearm like this. So again, be reminded about how to determine if a firearm is a homemade or a backyard made firearms. Serial numbers of the firearms, markings, the barrel, proper, or there is the alignment of the cylinder and the barrel. Those are the commonly observed. Class A, Class B, Class C firearm, or whatsoever, that is still unlicensed firearm. So buy it on a legitimate gun store. So with this short presentation, hopefully that you learned something. So that's all, and thank you very much.